All right. Morning. Here in Brewery Town section of Philadelphia. My good friend Sam Oropeza and Matthew Maltepes. I first want to thank Professor John Cromer, the University of Pennsylvania, for allowing me to take time out of my day to this podcast. So before we get into our topics of discussion, I want to allow Sam and Matt to introduce themselves so you can get to know them a little better.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Sam Oropeza. I am a two-time Republican candidate for office. I ran for state senate in May of 2022, and I also most recently ran for city council at large on the Republican ticket in 2023.
My name is Matt Maltepes. I am founder and owner of the Maltepes Report, bringing the world to you, World News Media brand that I've created not too long ago. I'm glad to be here with Pat and glad to be here with Sam.
Thanks. Thank you, guys. Yeah, this is Matt's spot. Grateful for him allowing us to use this, so I appreciate that.
No problem, man. Anytime.
Sam, so got a few key talking points for you right now. I kind of want to dive into your state senate campaign and kind of go into your city council campaign and lessons learned and your experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I ran for state senate, it was a special election, so it was a shorter period of time. I mean, I only really had 3 months from the start of it. John Sabatina, who was the current state senator, stepped down to become judge of common pleas in Philadelphia, so there was an opening. I saw this as a great opportunity because the 5th Senate District in Northeast Philadelphia is quite possibly the only Senate district in Philly where a Republican actually has a chance to win just based on the Republican to Democrat numbers. I believe it's 2-1 or almost 3-1 actually, Democrats to Republicans. So it's very possible that a Republican can win. Also, the person I was running against had never held office before, so I thought this was a great opportunity, especially considering my background being a former professional fighter. I had a strong social media presence, and when you look at a 3-month campaign, I thought social media would be a big part of getting your message out there, and it still is, regardless of it's a special election or not. One of the big reasons why I ran for city council after my state senate run was just the lessons I had learned when I saw the flaws within the Philadelphia GOP leadership, and really just being new to politics and not knowing who's who, what's what, and you almost have to run a campaign to kind of find out who's telling you the truth and who's lying to you. So that was a big reason why I wanted to do it again, and it was ultimately the real reason why I didn't seek the Philly GOP endorsement when I ran for city council at large, just looking at, the glaring issues within the party.
Great. Yeah, I had an opportunity to work on Sam's city council campaign, and one thing you realize is how much people actually don't know goes on behind the scenes in Philadelphia politics, especially in the Republican Party, but across the board. I kind of wanted to direct back to Matt. Matt, besides Sam, have you had any other local, politicians or political activists on the show?
So I've not had any other political activists or politicians on my show, the Maltepes Show, but I have had some former military people. Last episode, I had a Green Beret sniper turned musician, so that was definitely interesting and a special one.
Okay. So kind of, we've seen the inside perspective of politics. Since you're not too involved in Philadelphia politics, I kind of want to get your side of how you view it well,
So there's a lot of shadiness that goes on in Philadelphia. There's a lot of shadiness that goes on in a lot of major cities in America. Philadelphia, definitely one of them. And when we look at a lot of different things, whether it's crime, whether it's backing the police force, whether it's so many different factors, it's education, family values going on in Philadelphia, current state of respect each person has for their fellow neighbor. There's a lot of things that can be cleaned up or sharpened up, and I think Sam is a great guy to really try to make that change. Because back in the days, it was a little bit different. Now it seems like it's very chaotic. There's not much order. And whenever things are chaotic, it falls to shambles, right? There's a lot of crime rises, there's more familial problems, and there's a multitude of problems that occur. So that's how I'm viewing it right now.
Yeah, you kind of brought up a good point that just came to my mind as well, is how, politicians don't want to focus on the actual problems.
Yes.
They want to tell people
What they want to hear. Yeah.
It doesn't, you can live in Philadelphia for 2 months and know the major issues, but nothing's still.
It's about what gets the votes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not about what works. There's a difference.
Yeah. What do you think about that too, Sam?
Unfortunately, one of the big issues I saw during the campaign was people will come to politicians and want to become, involved with local politics or with the party because it offers opportunities such as, a job. And one of the reasons that I didn't show up was I don't need a job. I make my own money. I work hard for what I do. And running a business in Philadelphia is very difficult. There are a lot of issues that I need to get through every day that I'm like, man, if I could just run my business without dealing with, crime, without dealing with the dangers within our public safety, and if Philadelphia could become a safer place to live, it would attract more customers, it would attract more opportunities for me. So, ultimately, that was one of the big reasons why I wanted to run. And also, when the pandemic hit and the schools closed and I saw the psychological effects it had on my 2 young children, who are now 7 and 8 years old, I just feel as though they came after our children's education. It was an opportunity not to help us, but to really harm us. And having to deal with those problems and the psychological effects it had, I felt it was my duty to step up and try to do something about it, because complaining about it isn't going to change anything. What we need right now are for younger people like ourselves to take action and to do something about this and to really challenge the power system in Philadelphia right now.
Yeah, so kind of to add to that, how do you think we combat nepotism politics, especially in Philadelphia? So many young, aspiring, great leaders that have a lot of good ideas. I obviously seen that working on Sam's campaign. But then you have the gate guards that tell you, hey, it's my way or the highway. So,
well, that's part of the nonstop, continuous effort that you got to keep on putting in, right? They want you, that's what they would want, right? They want you to fall over. That's when you got to say, look, I'm going to fight even harder. And that's what you got to do. It's all about, you got to be mentally strong and mentally willed to go that extra mile. And go back on Sam's point, talked about crime and owning a business in Philadelphia. When we look at all the department stores, you go in Target, everything's locked up. You talked about public safety, you're running a business. What just happened at Macy's? Someone got stabbed at Macy's. So these are the things that it's a must, it's a need, it's a necessity. We must clean up our act.
Yeah, you know what? I'm so glad you brought that up. And the other thing that the point that I'd love to get out is, when you look at our district attorney's office, when you look at our lawmakers here in Philadelphia, none of them are working 2 jobs. None of them are working a loss prevention job at Macy's to make ends meet. And really, what would happen if that was a requirement, to become a lawmaker? And what if that was a requirement to work in the district's attorney's office, where you had to know what it was like to be an everyday Philadelphian, and that, that person who was killed at Macy's, which is so upsetting because this is someone who is doing their job. This is someone who showed up to work that day, was working 2 jobs to afford a home in the largest, most affordable city in America. I can guarantee you this, if our lawmakers were required to do that, and I'm not saying they have to be required to do that, I'm just pointing out that we would have more affordable housing. We would have, less criminals on our streets, and we would attract better companies that offer higher paying jobs. And it is, it's a struggle here in Philadelphia to really get our leadership to see that, because I don't even think we scratched the surface of the potential here in Philadelphia when it comes to really bringing out the opportunities that can really exist here.
Yeah, I think to add to your point, good points. Building like our infrastructure up. There's a saying that Philadelphia is the biggest, poorest city in America.
True.
So, Sherrill Parker on board with the new Sixers stadium.
Yeah.
You guys have any thoughts on that?
So, want me to go?
Yeah.
So the Sixer Stadium, new Sixer Stadium, it's a little bit similar to Madison Square Garden down in New York, right? And the problem with Philadelphia is, for the longest time, you couldn't build above what? What building could you not build above?
William Penn, right?
Exactly.
City Hall.
Yeah. So that kind of drove out a lot of different people, and they went to New York instead. So that was a missed opportunity. Here, it's definitely going to cause a lot of chaos. I don't know if we have the right infrastructure for a stadium down in Center City, but it is going to, it has the possibility, it has a lot of potential to bring a lot of business and a lot of other things. So you take the good with the bad. I think it's a good idea, but they must execute. There's a difference between good ideas and an execution. Everyone has good ideas. Many people do, but it's about the execution, and Philadelphia has not been able to execute properly.
Yeah, to your point, I totally see what you're saying. But I like seeing good jobs come to Philadelphia, and having a trade school background, I like seeing opportunities for the building trades. With that being said, I don't live in the neighborhood that's going to be affected by the construction of this arena. I've been to Madison Square Garden, thought it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen, seeing a stadium in the middle of a giant city like New York, which I do like the idea of it. But again, I defer to the people who are going to have to live there, whose businesses are going to be affected by it. And, ultimately, I think they should have the say in if this gets built or if it doesn't get built.
Yeah, to add to your point, I know Chinese community has a lot of backlash with what's happening. I do know, like, kind of their middle ground is, hey, if you're going to do this, we're doing it with Chinese developers. So I think that's a bottleneck right now. Yeah,
it's definitely very interesting, to say the least. At the end of the day, I do think there's a lot of potential, and I think it'll end up good for Philadelphia long term. But there's going to be a lot of bumps. There's going to be a lot of things in the road, a lot of obstacles that you're going to have to get around. That is one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and devil's advocate, if you don't mind, what if they don't want to build it here? What if the Sixers see opportunity in Camden over the bridge, and it's something that I don't want us to lose out on good opportunities here when it comes to attracting higher paying jobs. And, what I'm seeing at least is if I was the Sixers, I would want to go where I felt it was going to be easier to operate my business. And sometimes when I look over the bridge, I wonder what the Sixers are thinking too. So I would hate for us to lose the opportunity as well.
Yeah, and that you got a 10-year tax abatement over there in Camden for businesses as well.
That sounds good.
Yeah. And they already have established relationship.
They do.
Practice
Facility.
stadiums over there. I've talked about that with Professor Cromer as well. He took us over to Camden to kind of look at the urban development over there, and that was one big thing is, hey, is Camden going to come in and sweep the Sixer Stadium up? Which causes an issue for Sherrill Parker because she promised a lot of building trades jobs.
Yeah, it would be a huge issue. It would be a giant loss for Philadelphia in tax revenue. And we love our 76ers in Philadelphia. They do. I mean, we are diehard. You look at all the sports teams in Philadelphia, they are so important to the culture, but also the tax revenue.
Yeah, and then now the idea of building a subway on Roosevelt Boulevard. It's your guys' thoughts on that?
Real quick, what's your thoughts?
Yeah.
I grew up. My mom lived in Mayfair. My dad lives in Frankfurt. I think things are kind of flip flopping now. Mayfair was a very family oriented place, good community. I feel like when things get gentrified, crime pushes up further and further, and kind of flip flops around. But as far as like an infrastructure point, I think it'll cause more crime, to be honest.
I think that's definitely a possibility. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I do look, to New York City, what's going on there. Obviously, not the best. But how about you, Sam?
So we talked about this in the podcast we've done, and it's a big issue that I like to talk about. Is working in Kensington every day. My office is right off of the Avenue. I see the drug trade, how our public transit is used to assist and aid our drug trade, and also how along the Market Frankfurt line, it connects, Frankfurt to Center City and everything along the way. And it also connects you to the suburbs as well, too, to 69th Street to Upper Darby. And we are a major city. And again, when I go to Chicago, when I go to New York, you do not see poverty underneath the L. So what are we doing wrong with this right now? And I just believe that we need to like actually focus in on that problem, the fentanyl crisis, getting the fentanyl off of our streets, because it is killing, working age men and women. It is the number one killer of working age men and women, especially in Philadelphia. And if we're going to continue to put, another artery connecting Northeast Philadelphia, I just would like to see a real concentrated plan and effort for crime that is just going to increase our public safety here before we start, building the subway. But at the end of the day, ideally, I think a subway connecting Northeast Philadelphia to Center City is absolutely amazing, and I'm all for it. But we need to address the real problems here.
Yeah, kind of to add to what you said, talked about earlier, the problems are right in front of our face, but we continue to
Side.
Yes.
From to the side.
So we're focusing on the subway, but we're not focusing on what's going on in Kensington. Well, it takes 5 minutes of being down there to realize, hey, there's open air drug use. Well, going back to that point, Mayor Kenny actually had an executive order for opioid emergency response team. He signed that in 2018 with a bunch of other associations in Philadelphia, and pretty much to clean up any tents or combat open air drug use, allowing cops to do their job. But I feel like once COVID-19 happened, cops became public enemy number one. So it was kind of like, hey, can I even do my job anymore?
Well, that's exactly what happened. And I talked about it earlier. The police force, they don't feel like anyone has their back anymore. So when the police force feels that way, well, then why should they risk their life for all the people and all the crime that's going on? When they know, look, no one's going to protect me. So you need to have some backing of the police force. You need the politicians to say, hey, look, we support the police. Not we defund the police. You understand? When you support the police, what happens is, now, we also talked about this on our podcast when we had one, Sam, but being able to have someone go into, whether it's Kensington or, go into these high crime rate little circles, right, hot spots, and being able to actually do their job. Not being afraid that no one's going to have their back. When they're able to do their job, well, then what's going to happen? Crime rates are going to come down.
Yeah, and the other major issue this has led to is you are seeing there people are leaving the police force in gigantic numbers that we have never seen before. And then when you look at our recruiting, we are recruiting way less police officers than we used to recruit. So we have a void that is almost impossible to fill. And if we are upset with policing, and I'm a big advocate for this, if we are upset with the way we are policed, I would love to see the people from those neighborhoods that feel disenfranchised from our police officers join the police force, right? If you really want to change it, then this is so important right now because, again, like we said, Philadelphia, fifth largest city in the country, highest poverty rate out of every major city, and a job within the police force, especially when you go into poverty-ridden neighborhoods, this is an opportunity to extricate yourself from these neighborhoods, to extricate yourself from a system of poverty, and actually be part of the solution. And again, what I love about Philadelphia and what I love about Philadelphia police is you get to use discretion in your policing. So you're not going to police the 22nd Police District near Temple or the 24th Police District, which is Kensington, like the way you would at Rittenhouse Square or Washington Square. So this is such a great opportunity to reach out to our urban communities and actually change policing. But the idea that we need to condemn police officers, or the idea that police officers who are emergency response personnel, they are critical to the way we live our lives every day when it comes to just public safety and just simple things like traffic accidents. You know what I mean? Like these are our first responders. This is somebody we should be excited when we see a police officer, not angry or upset.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you both in Sherrill Parker's seat. What would be your top 3 priorities coming in as the new mayor, if you were the mayor, or Sherrill Parker?
Want me to go first?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
So my top priorities, I think number one, public safety has to be number one. Like we said before, we are short 1,300 police officers, I think is the number. I think filling those vacancies and making sure we have a fully staffed police force would be my number one priority. Number two, and again, like this kind of goes hand in hand with number one, but the safety within our public schools. I mean, Philadelphia has one of the most dangerous public school systems in the country. Children cannot learn in dangerous environments. So if we really want to change people's lives here in Philadelphia, I think focusing in on making our schools safer and giving children an environment of public safety would be so important right now. And number 3, just because it would actually promote a safer, better city for all of us. I mean, getting the trash off of, it's just simple quality of life, getting trash off of our streets, making it so, I mean, I walk down the streets in Kensington every day. I walk up and down the streets in Kensington. It's part of my business. And the amount of trash, I think about if I was a kid growing up without my father, without the real strong guidance that I need, and I just looked at the streets, I mean, what would I value? What would my thought process be? You know what I mean? And how would I value myself? So if we want to make big changes, I think little small strides in cleaning up our streets would make a big difference.
So if I had to go top 3, I have to say first is crime. I'd have to back the police more than maybe ever before. We really have to settle this. Okay? See what's going on, the looting. It's everywhere. The random stabbings, sees, the drugs, everything, all of it combined. That's my first thing, crime. Second off, got to focus on jobs. People are struggling more than ever. Talked about the Macy's guy. He's working 2 jobs just to buy 1 house, right? Look at inflation. You looked at all the different problems. Fed keeps on printing money, whatever the case is. A lot of packages are going out to different countries. Well, look at the cost of eggs for breakfast, cost of gas, right? Your electric bill, all these different things, they add up. People are really struggling out here. People are in more debt now than ever. If you look at credit card debt, it's higher than ever. Look at whether it's loans for cars, whatever the case is, higher than ever, right? People are living on debt right now. So you got to focus economics, obviously. And third would have to be community for the kids. A kid that grows up, like let's say Sam talked about, he doesn't have his father. He's walking the streets, let's say, of Kensington, like you said. But if he has a strong community, people he can rely on, a little bit different, right? Those things, they matter. Like sometimes, kids grow up in the boxing gym. And Sam can speak to that. I've seen it. So, things like that, it keeps you out of trouble, keeps you from doing, stupid things, especially in the summer, So those are probably the top three things for me.
Yeah, you brought up like cost of living. If you look at the price ceiling for rent to income, it's supposed to be 30%. But right now it's about 50%. So it's kind of half your paycheck is going to rent, and that's even if you're making at least minimum wage or medium income. So I think there's a huge issue with affordable housing. So that's kind of a tough. It's kind of tough to tell a developer, hey, 30% of your building is going to affordable housing, but you can get a tax break for doing that. But then you have to deal with the implications of tenants not paying their rent, some drugs, other issues like that. And then if you have to evict someone, that could turn into a dangerous situation. So kind of a tough thing to kind of mitigate that or allow that. So I don't know if you've ever dealt with that, Sam, working in real estate development at all.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it is an issue. Unfortunately, we talked about like the economy. We talked about jobs. I mean, what I saw at least is in the past 18 months, 16 months, you just seen it almost feels like the air got sucked out of the economy. So people are not able to spend the money they previously were able to spend or have the money. And really, when you look at consumer goods, if you look at the price of food, like we talked about, price of gas and the price of rent, the three kind of most important things are the ones that inflation hit the hardest. So again, and this isn't one of my top three, but it's one of those things where it really makes me want Philadelphia to become the hub of something, especially innovation right now. And when I look at the issues we have, and again, this kind of gets me like shunned when I bring this up into like the conservative circles, just because it is the old boys club. I believe Philadelphia really, if it wants to look at innovation, we should become the hub of, psychedelic drugs to get people off of fentanyl, to get people off of xylazine. We have so much opportunity here to fix this. And if we could fix the problem in Philadelphia, we could branch this out to other major cities, because all major cities are feeling the pain and the pressure of this right now. And it's time to start welcoming innovative ideas that actually can get results right now, as opposed to making sure the funding goes to your buddy, as opposed to making sure we're only worrying about giving jobs out to people that are helping us get in the office. There needs to be a common ground right now, and I feel opening Philadelphia up to innovation is going to be key moving into the future.
One thing, thinking about employment now, one thing that pisses me off is how they count part-time jobs in the employment percentage. So, you know,
So everyone, the job numbers are increasing because everybody has a second job.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Well,
Silly.
they skew the numbers to increase their popularity or increase votes or whatever the case is. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's inflation. How many different ways are there to measure inflation? There are a good amount.
Yeah.
And guess what? Depending on, depending on which one's high, which one's low, you're going to pick the best one for you. So that's another thing we talked about at the beginning. Not what's best for the people, but what's best for my agenda.
Yeah, and I think huge issue was how, China's been buying our treasury bonds since 2000. So we're pretty much building their infrastructure for them.
It's very true. They own a lot of farmland in the United States as well.
They're supposed to surpass our GDP by 2030, which is ironic because that's the date that was set for the AI arms race between America and China.
There's a lot of different things for 2030.
Yeah.
And look, they are a dangerous regime. When you look at being able to outproduce China, I mean, they ultimately have slave labor when you look at it. And if you look at the Uyghur population, that was something where their human, when you look at what they have done to people, they have committed atrocities. So this is a dangerous regime. And to me, seeing politicians bend knees to China it really is frightening. Because when you look at where the fentanyl is coming, where it's produced at, I mean, and now they're starting to be able to produce it anywhere. But this was coming from China. So this is a form of narco warfare that we are dealing with.
That kind of brings me back to like Mayfair. All the developers that came into Mayfair and bought all the properties were Chinese community. So I feel they're definitely buying a lot of real estate. They come down from New York. I think they do that.
It's true because especially after COVID, they came in and I'm pretty sure they were buying boatloads, especially in New York.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia was a great option. Like if you were coming from New York and you were selling your property during COVID, I'd come to Philadelphia. And when you look at what you could purchase, you sold your property for close to $1 million, $800,000 to $1 million, and it's like I'd come to Philadelphia, I'd get a house for under $200,000, and a nice one too.
Yeah, it's even like the stock market. Yeah, just like someone had to know this dip was coming because how insane everything ran up. The housing market
Bubble.
Yeah, pretty much. Was it an artificial bubble?
Yeah, when you were borrowing money under 3%.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to now at 8%,
there's a huge difference.
Yeah, it's a lot more money you have to spend a month, plus on top of all the things we also talked about, like gas, food,
Yeah. And I kind of want to, we brought up artificial intelligence. What do you think that's going to do to the job market?
I think it's going to destroy it. Not completely, but think about how many jobs. It's like if you run a business, right, for example, and you can either rely on technology or pay someone hourly, where, like, I'd rather have an autonomous business like Royal Farms, for example. You go in, you pay, there's really no employees in there. You don't got to pay any employees, right?
Yeah.
And that's essentially what AI is going to do in so many different levels.
Yeah, and like education's already a huge issue in Philadelphia. So, how do we get people educated to actually, we already have issues with employment without AI. Now that factors in. So, I feel that's going to make things even worse, like crime, poverty.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's going to be a policed state. That's what it seems like. If everything's artificial intelligence, everything's digital, everything's tracked, right?
Yeah.
Then essentially, what is that?
Yeah, they know where you are at all times. They know what you're doing. They know who you're with.
They see you at all times. If everything's ran by AI,
Yeah, I think like they're calling it the third revolution, it's artificial intelligence. I think that's why it's imperative that we do outperform China. Whoever holds the power, artificial intelligence is pretty much going to hold the power.
it's like an arms race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the biggest issue with the government is creating patents that they can own for both defensive and offensive when it comes to artificial intelligence, because most of the talent is in private corporations. So it's like, how do I get these come over to the government, pay them enough so we can patent this, so we can only use this,
Well, think about it. What's going on, right? There's war in different areas that people are not seeing. The war that's being taken place, you cannot see. It's the AI race war. It's the biological war. It's the drug narco war. It's not direct, I bomb you, you bomb me type of war that's going on. It's totally different. We're in a different age, and that's something people do not understand.
Yeah, it's the slow decay, weakening you so poorly to the point where now you can't defend yourself. Now you can't stop exactly what we've been planning for. It's the 100-year war. It really is.
Yeah, and I think we're in a war right now. I think propaganda, disinformation, influential operations. I think we're so divided as a country. It's so easy to use social media, and artificial intelligence just scales that to a greater level.
So polarized.
Yeah,
It's polarized beyond belief. No longer can we come together, just talk, discuss, and understand each other's shoes. And that's what I actually created this for. Maltepes Show, the Maltepes Report. It's not just to bring the world to you, but to bring the world together.
we value biases over facts in this world as well.
Yeah.
No one does their own research. They go off of a headline.
We have opinions. People journal their opinions, not reporters reporting the facts.
I think it also speaks to how our society values a certain level of comfort as opposed to challenging themselves. Like, for me at least, I continuously try to challenge my belief system. I continually try to challenge me physically, mentally, spiritually, so I can grow, so I can develop. And really, when you look at it today, if you see the issues we're facing as a society, we're not moving forward, we're not progressing, we're moving backwards. We're almost becoming more of a tribal society, which I find to be absolutely bizarre, because like when I look at who I want to vote for, I look at their value system. I don't look if they have a similar last name as me, if their last name ends in a vale, if their grandfather came from the same country that my grandfather came from. I'm looking for somebody who supports American ideals and values and is willing to bring us into the future. And today's society, I mean, it's definitely, we are moving backwards at an accelerated rate than I've ever seen.
And kind of, you both think like no one believes in democracy anymore. If you look at some numbers, I'll say some numbers right now, actually, based off of the 2023 general election in Philadelphia. 65-year-olds had 52% of the votes, whereas if you were 18, 34, only 17%. But 18 to 34 was the most registered voters.
Yep.
So, kind of makes you think, hey, you would think it would be the opposite. Younger, more outspoken.
I think young people, they've gotten to the point where there's so much, it's just possibility, but there's so much that's thrown their way from the left, from the right, from the left, from the right, just propaganda nonstop. Whether it's on social media, whether it's, even on campus, right? You go to campus, go to class. It's like, honestly, they just remove themselves. Because maybe it's too much to deal with. And not to mention, these young kids, guess what? Suicide rates are higher than ever. Like they're dealing with a lot of problems, mental health issues. You know, so that's just a couple of things to factor in.
Yeah, I mean, Sam, you've been in the game. What do you think about, you know?
So I look at it from a couple different ways. Number one, I never try to blame the electorate. Like, you know, these are, to me, I look at myself, right, and it's like, what are the issues that are going to get people to come out and vote, and how do you get the word out there, and how do you connect? Because this is, and I want everyone who's listening to this to understand this, when you run a campaign, you have to find a way to connect with people. You have to find a way to get people to see the vision that you see, right? And it is one of the most challenging things I have ever done in my whole entire life. And I'm somebody who's really inspired by, you know, big civil rights. Like Martin Luther King is a gigantic inspiration to me, especially the way he was able to get people to see what he saw. And the challenges you're going to be faced with today, everything you talked about, right? Like our society is becoming more tribal. It's mental health is a major issue. And then also, too, I have 2 young children. I'm the sole provider for my family. I have to get through the day and make money. So it's like, how much time do I have to spend listening to somebody who, especially if you live in Philadelphia, you're just, you know, you feel disenfranchised. You feel like you've been lied to vote for someone. So this is a giant issue. This is like, well, what is it going to take for people to wake up and to hear that message? And what is that message really going to sound like right now? Because, Pat, you're at Penn. This is going to get played at Penn. To your professor, to your classmates, what is that message? What do they think is going to resonate with 18 to 35-year-olds and baby boomers and every generation in between right now?
Yeah, I've talked to a few of my classmates actually about this. Why, you know, kind of sitting around talking, why isn't it a federal holiday on election day? Why isn't everyone off to go vote? You know, we were built off democracy, right?
Yeah.
So why isn't it a federal holiday, you know?
That's a good one.
Doesn't make sense. Even at colleges, you know, that's where most politics and indoctrination starts, you know?
Yeah, it's true.
And when you look at the numbers, we're not, like, even though this is the top of our society, it's not really something that is pushed. It's not something that seems that important. So I don't know. To answer that question, I really don't.
And I don't think at this point we could say it's an accessibility thing, you know?
It's never been easier.
Especially for 18 to 34, you know where to go. You have mail-in ballots now.
That is true, mail-in ballots.
Yeah. So is it to the point, like I said, where people just know, hey, regardless of my vote, it doesn't matter?
That's part of it. Definitely.
It's pretty sad.
Yeah, and I don't think it's something we're going to get the answer to today. It's a big disconnect in our society right now, and the problem that it leads to is the fact that, like, when you look at the people in power, they stay in power because of the amount of money they can raise for their campaigns, and they're not going to make it easier for someone like us to try to step up into this arena and get our voices heard and try to create the change that our society needs right now. So it's leading to bigger problems. When I ran for state senate, I raised $150,000 in 3 months, and the person I was running against had $1 million in their campaign funds. It's like, how do you compete against somebody who has the ability to reach such a larger audience and say exactly what they want to say to them, even if they have no intent of actually following through with anything they're telling people?
Yeah.
That's the issue. Not the issue, but that's the problem. They have the funding. Whereas, regular guy, he doesn't. They can just keep on going and going and going and going. That's why, it was a big thing. People that lobby, right? Lobbyists, funding others. But then you have a couple of people only a couple of people in our nation that were more so self-funded that ran for president. And that was definitely a huge difference in their outcome.
And that's what when it really comes to talking about what I was saying, when it comes about bringing real change, we need more people who can be disruptors, who can really challenge the current power system. And, they are the people that stand out to me the most. People that are like, I'm going to call everybody out on their actual real record, because it's hard for a normal everyday American to go through campaign finance reports to see who is funding these candidates, to see, who they're going to be beholden to when they get in the office. So, again, I don't think this is an issue we'll be able to solve in a podcast, but they're the questions that I want the University of Penn to think about and, start answering those questions.
Yeah, so before we wrap up, Matt, why don't you tell us a little about Maltepes Report and where people can find your podcast?
So, yeah, you can find the Maltepes Report on Twitter, or X now, officially known as X, at Maltepes Report, MALTEPES Report. You can find us on YouTube and Spotify. Our show is on all three platforms, Spotify, X, and YouTube. So you're able to find us on basically any platform, whether it's TikTok, Instagram. But the shows are broadcasted on X, Spotify, and YouTube.
What's kind of like the genre of it?
So it's world news media. It's everything and anything. So a lot of things I do, I interview a lot of people, right? It's like a Rogan-style podcast. And sometimes, like the one I had with Sam, we talk about current issues that have just arisen, right? For example, the Israel-Palestine-Hamas issue that was going on in the Middle East, that had just erupted. So right away, me and Sam, we went down to the studio and we just talked about it. What's going on? Do we have the facts? What facts do we have? What do we know so far? Going back and forth discussing. We talked about Philadelphia. We talked about many different things. So it's a little bit of a mix of interviews, and then on top of that, just open and free discussion.
Yeah, I want to thank both of you for allowing me to do this podcast with you.
I had a great time talking.
Yeah. I think we hit some key points and talked about a lot of issues that are occurring. So thank Professor John Cromer for allowing me to do this as well, and I hope everyone listens to this and enjoys it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.